Come on in, everybody. Can you guys hear that music? Let me know if you can hear the music. Trying something a little different. I'm going to go ahead and lower it. Welcome back to the Holler. I'm going to leave it on a little bit here. Let me know if you guys can hear that. Welcome back to the Holler. I'm Justin, founder of the Holler. Appreciate all you guys following along. We have hollers all across the state. That's all thanks to you. Follow all the hollers near you. Let me know how that music sounds. This is a different thing, just letting it play in the background a little bit as we talk about the issues of the day. If it's annoying, I'll shut it off. If you can't hear it, let me know that too. Couple things we wanted to touch base on before I do. tnholler.com is where you can find us. Chip in a few bucks a month to keep us going, and you'll get one of these sweet Holler hats like the one I'm wearing. But the things that I wanted to talk about today, want to get into some of this critical race theory nonsense. Just this stuff is everywhere now, and it's obviously a concerted effort to make our schools a battleground, the culture war battleground, which I guess in a sense it already is. But, you know, this has obviously become sort of a stand-in for essentially everything the right wing doesn't like. They just call it critical race theory now. Most of them have no idea what critical race theory is, but it's showing up everywhere. I just want to give a little context to it. First of all, there's a really good article from NBC News about how the battle is invading school boards with help from conservative groups, that national groups are essentially helping local groups make a big stink out of this. It's happening here in Williamson County. A group called Moms for Liberty is making a big deal out of this. There's obviously money behind them. This guy, Robbie Starbuck, just announced to run for Jim Cooper's seat, who's actually a Williamson County guy, and his big issue is critical race theory. Again, what they think it is or what they want it to be, only they can tell you. But, we all know that what's really going on here is they don't want the truth being taught in our schools, and that is a dangerous and sad thing. This guy, Chris Rufo, is a name you should know. This is a guy who has been talking about this since March, and he says he's a Manhattan Institute think tank guy. He in March said, "We have successfully frozen their brand into the public conversation and are steadily driving up negative perceptions. We will eventually turn it toxic as we put all of the various cultural insanities under that brand category. The goal is to have the public read something crazy in the newspaper and immediately think critical race theory. We have decodified the term and will recodify it to annex the entire range of cultural constructions that are unpopular with Americans." So there's a guy who has been on Tucker Carlson's show back in March, basically saying, we're going to make critical race theory a thing, and we're going to make it stand in for everything people on the right don't like. So what starts to happen? Trump picks it up. He says, good idea. Fox News, Tucker Carlson pick it up, and then it starts to trend. And so Chris Rufo says it's happening and it's trending, and also fundraises on it. Hey, I'm fighting critical race theory. Send me some money, because everything's a grift to these people. Then you have him retweeting that the most practical way to get around it in schools is to just decouple school funding from public institutions. So there you see it's really a Trojan horse for undoing public school funding, which is something that they've been trying to do for a long time, especially here in Tennessee. We've seen a lot of them going after public school funding because there's a lot of money in public school funding. And so if that money were to go to instead private Christian schools, that would be quite the score for people like Bill Lee and Betsy DeVos, who has been quoted saying that her whole agenda being the Secretary of Education was to advance God's kingdom. So now to tie it even further to God's kingdom, today here in Nashville, there is the Southern Baptist Convention, and this is being handed out at the tables. Contentious issue expected to come up later today. So they are making critical race theory an issue at the Southern Baptist Convention today. And they went even further than that. And I'm going to show you a clip from that right now. This was earlier today at the Southern Baptist Convention. A pastor stood up and he said this about critical race theory, which got a standing ovation.
Messenger from Salem Baptist Church, Vatican Sabbath, Virginia, a motion related to critical race theory. Whereas government entities, states, counties, and school boards across America are trying to force critical race theory on our society, whereas critical race theory is not a Christian idea, but comes out of radical Marxism, whereas critical race theory is out to destroy Christianity in this nation. Whereas the tenets of critical race.
Okay, so you get the point. Out to destroy Christianity, as though, I mean, somebody tweeted this, and it's a great point. Like, so Christianity and God are so weak that talking about our past in a way that they don't like will destroy Christianity. I mean, it's really just becoming a stand-in for everything they don't like. And it's really important that we see it that way, that we call it out for what it is. This is nonsense, and it's in some ways it's piggybacking off of some things that even people on the left have said, or not on the left, but Democrats or self-described progressives. This is a fight that's been happening even in New York City, where they feel like the anti-racism stuff has gone too far, the wokeness has gone too far, and this is the right-wing Republican version of that. But it's a really dangerous, slippery slope to start to ban things that we disagree with, ban ideas, and attack things in this general way. And, now you've got teachers in Tennessee who are, potentially going to be fired over this garbage. You've got in Memphis, there was a whole pledge to teach the truth that happened. And I think they may have even had a march for it this weekend. So this is a very serious thing. And it's taking place at the school board level, at the local level, and, around our children. So, and it's being tied to the church and to, things that obviously trigger people in a very real way. And it's all based on this nonsense that was started by, intentionally by guys like Chris Rufo and Fox News. Now, Fox News distributed this guy, Chris Rufo's packet, basically on how to fight this at the school board level. And I want you to see this excerpt from Chris Rufo's packet on foxnews.com being distributed like a how-to guide. It says they will stop at nothing. How will you be attacked? And then it says, as previously discussed, the way critical race theory and CSJ, so probably social, I don't know what that is, operate is as takeover ideologies. CRT proponents do not care how they win as long as they win. They're not trying to win an academic idea. And then here comes the killer here. This is really gross. They are attempting to socially replace you. And then he repeats it. Read that line again. They are not trying to win. They're attempting to socially replace you. Now, socially replace you. That should remind you of the Great Replacement Theory, which is a white supremacist idea that says that people of color and Jews, you might remember Jews will not replace us from Charlottesville. The Great Replacement Theory has gotten many people killed. It's the Pittsburgh shooter who shot the Jews. It was in his manifesto. It's in the manifesto of shooters all across this country. And there it is on Fox News, linked to critical race theory, written by this guy, Chris Rufo. So all of this stuff is tied together. I see somebody saying, L. Doolittle says, I'm a pastor and he's off base theologically. I'm sure that's true. They did fire the guy at Tennessee High. He was fired. So you're talking about this man, Coach Hawk, Coach Hahn, that's his name, Coach Hahn. I have his picture here. He was fired in Sullivan County for teaching not critical race theory, but I'm sure that's probably what they'll call that. He was fired for teaching a Ta-Nehisi Coates essay about Color. I forget what the essay was. Ta-Nehisi Coates' essay, and then another instance he was fired for teaching a spoken word poem. But it was, yes, Coach Hahn, thank you. But it was tied to critical race theory in that this happened literally the day we passed the anti-critical race theory legislation here in Tennessee, which doesn't even mention critical race theory. So, it's all over the map. These people don't even know what they're fighting against, who they're fighting against. They're just basically fighting against the idea of teaching the truth about our history. And, they always say in defense of keeping the KKK Grand Wizard statue in a place of honor in our capital, oh no, we just need to be reminded of our history. But at the same time, they don't want to be reminded of the history that's uncomfortable for white people. And that's what's really going on here. White people don't want to be uncomfortable. And since they're still in positions of power throughout this country, they're going to use that power to make sure that they're not uncomfortable anymore. And so that's what we're seeing here. And L. Doolittle, who's a pastor, says the replacement ideology is strongly tied to evangelical theology. That's why it threatens them. Yes, there's a guy named Robert Jones who also makes a similar point. So all of this stuff is tied together. All of it is something that we need to watch out for. And then as I'm forgetting her name, Ruffin, I think it is, on Peacock said, only 8% of U.S. high school seniors surveyed can identify slavery as the central cause of the Civil War. Think about that. So it shows that not only do we need critical race theory, we need truthful teaching about our history, and our kids are in a bad place if that's the truth. And that's intentional. We saw Rep. Mike Sparks here in Tennessee. He refused to answer me when I asked him on camera, is slavery the cause of the Civil War? Is that what people were fighting over? He wouldn't answer. I've asked him like 5 times since. He still won't answer. And that's all a part of, their attempt to clean up the lost cause, to clean up what happened, to essentially make the Confederacy the good guys. Because at the end of the day, the Civil War never really ended. It just sort of has taken different forms. And all of this stuff is linked together and can't be taken out of context. So it's really important that we keep talking about this stuff. Again, the Southern Baptist Convention is meeting today in Nashville. That's not the only issue. There's also abuse is a big part of the issue that they're dealing with. And, it's just an attempt to keep minority rule, to keep white people in power. Rand Paul was quoted 2 days ago as saying the idea of democracy and majority rule is what goes against our history and what the country stands for. I mean, up is down with these people, and it's really hard to argue against the lies. Dave Munt says Republicans don't want the ugly reality of history, which does not paint conservatives in a pretty color to be taught. We need to push to get this issue dealt with by electing more Democrats. There's that. Monica Meek says they are teaching that the Civil War was about states' rights. Yeah, the right to own slaves. Exactly, Monica. And they lie so casually. That's what gets me. I wanted to talk a little bit about, I don't know if you guys saw, I was on a Fox Nashville panel. It aired Sunday morning. And I was on there with Holly McCall, who runs the Tennessee Lookout, and 2 Republican operatives were on there. Rick Williams, who's on there all the time, who used to be a Democratic operative until Republicans had the money and the power. So it shows you what that guy's about. And then Trace Whittem, who's a guy, I get along with on a friendly level, but, when it comes to this stuff, I just really lose a lot of respect for him. And, they were both on this show saying openly that the big lie that Trump won and that, the election was stolen. And they're among the 71% of Tennessee Republicans who say the election was stolen. And the reason I'm pulling up this clip is because Holly and I ripped them for a minute and a half about this. And at the end of it, even though, we had just handed them their asses, I was pissed off. Holly was pissed off. And look at these two over here smiling with Cheshire cat grins on the right side of the screen. And that just tells you all you need to know. Neither one of them had any point. Trace said, he didn't think that 80 million people would vote for Biden. I told him 80 million people voted against Trump. Rick went to the Arizona fraudit bullshit saying, that they're coming up with what really happened. And obviously we know that that's just nonsense. So, I think the point to all of this is we have to keep telling the truth. We have to keep getting in their faces about this stuff. Kadek says Tennessee's a conservative mess. Keep up the fight. We'll do all we can. It's tough because it's such a steady stream of garbage and nonsense and lies, and it's hard to just keep going when when that's happening. But we have to. We have no choice. We have to do it. A couple of other things that I wanted to point out: the Wilson County, Tennessee Republicans are going to be honoring Marjorie Trader Greene, who is obviously at the core of so much of this stuff. They're going to be honoring her. Shame on them. What an absolute disgrace. But the truth is, she's actually closer to the core of the Republican Party than people want to admit. They treat her like she's some fringe, sideshow. But the truth is, many people agree with her about this stuff, and that's why she's being honored. One thing I wanted to share with you was my friend Corey Forrester, who's been on the Holler with us. He made a video because Marjorie Taylor Greene is his representative, and she was apologizing for suddenly figuring out that, the Holocaust was a bad thing. And he made a video mocking her, and it's worth watching because he's a funny dude.
Hello, and thank you for joining me here today. As your congressman, I would like to apologize for the horrible, horrible things that I said about the Holocaust. Yeah, didn't know that was a real thing. I ain't gonna lie to you. In my defense, 6 million, that's a lot. That's like how many people watch MASH. While we're getting things off our chest, I didn't know who Martin Luther King Jr. was. All right. Thought he was the guy who invented boulevards. I would also like to apologize for saying that the AIDS epidemic was just another one of God's little whoopsie diddlies, I believe is the term.
All right. So Corey's a funny dude. Definitely go follow him and check him out. But yeah, it's just wild that they are honoring Marjorie Trader Greene. It's so sad. Let's see. What are some of your comments? I'm looking here. Lauren says Nevada is considering a bill to put body cameras on teachers to make sure they aren't teaching CRT. I saw that. I think that was like some really fringe extremists putting something forward that won't get considered in a real way. But Lauren, at this point, we can't put anything past these people. So yes, that's worth looking at. That was a headline that I saw recently. Also, Caitlin says, if I understand, the primary objective is of those who appear to be working themselves into a frenzied state to prevent school children from ever hearing that the descendants of European settlers committed atrocities toward people of color or were even impolite to them. Because if they do hear actual facts, it will lead to godless communism, radical Marxism, satanic orgies, and the downfall of Western civilization. Yes, Caitlin, I think that's well said. That is what they're concerned about. Yes, they honored Candace Owens too. That was at the state level. They did do that. And then Renee says, Mike Stone, running for Southern Baptist leadership, told a sex abuse survivor to her face she was doing was detrimental to the church. She walked away sobbing. I did see reports of that. And then others patted him on the back. Yes, that's what we're dealing with. And then, also there is a faction of the church who doesn't think women should be able to preach. And also there are things going on here in our own backyard regarding church leadership turning their backs on people. I think everybody should go check out Freedom for Gracie is an Instagram page which has some horrific information about a situation going on at with members of Grace Baptist Church, which is Grace Chapel Church, which is where Governor Lee goes to church and Senator Jack Johnson. So it's going on in a lot of different places. And, I want to say, like, plenty of faithful people are followers of the Holler. Plenty of faithful people are friends of mine. I consider myself one. I'm a member of Temple Micah. This isn't to attack people who are people of faith or, who go to church or consider themselves Christians. But there does need to be a redefining of what it means to be Christian, to be faithful. And, in order to help people who actually do go by what Jesus preached, take back their faith, I think it's important to call out the ugliness and to lift up people like Reverend Barber, Pastor Riggs, Pastor Chris Williamson here, and so many other people who are deserving of, respect and who are, who have their faith sullied by people who do things like this. And so that's why we talk about it. And I think it's really important to talk about it. I think too often progressives and Democrats shy away from having conversations about faith or with people of faith, and they leave a void to be painted as godless heathens. And we know very much we are not that the message of the Bible is one to take care of the poor, take care of the stranger. And that is a lot more in line with what progressives do than what this version of the Republican Party is doing. So those are the things I really wanted to talk about today. If you guys have anything else you want to say, feel free to chime in. Just a couple other things that I'll flash while we're here. This is a Nashville, I guess, country store / gas station called the Lewis Country Store that has a Free the Boys billboard up. Apparently these guys are just trolls. He's talking about the Proud Boys, the insurrectionist far-right neo-fascists who he apparently supports. And, a lot of them have been arrested. So that's a store to stay away from. And yes, Monica says same with patriotism. Progressives are veterans too, no question about it. And we need to be louder about that. Another story, car plowed into protesters in Minnesota that were protesting the death of a black man. One was killed. Horrific video coming out of there, terrified people who were on the scene. And it's relevant to Tennessee because there was a bill to green light that kind of thing, run over a protester bill, we called it, that I believe Justin Jones single-handedly killed with a really emotional speech at the end of session. But it's not dead. It's just on pause, and it will be back next session. And so we need to remember that it's not hypothetical, that these things really do happen and did happen and continue to happen. And so it's really awful, but we need to speak out against it. Also, another thing to be aware of, election workers are still getting threatened and terrorized all across the country. And that's intentional. They're trying to force good people not to take these jobs, not to be involved with elections so that they can fill them with henchmen. And, I'll keep saying it till I'm blue in the face. I'm really worried about the state that our country is in. I think we're really only a couple of steps away from not having a democracy anymore. The first step being Republicans taking back the House, which probably will happen. And then the next step being a Democrat wins even a slightly close election in 2024 and not getting confirmed by that Republican House. And then where are we? Then we don't have a democracy anymore. Then America is over, just like that. And, we know that Republicans believe Biden stole the election from them, or say they do. I don't really believe that many of them actually do. I think they say they do. And so they're going to justify whatever they do next based on that lie. And so I think we're really close to being in serious trouble here, especially since they are so willing to lie. And this is a cartoon that I just wanted to show. Joe Manchin, who is refusing to kill the filibuster or support HR1 because it doesn't have Republican support, which is just so absurd on its face, to basically say you won't support a pro-democracy bill because the anti-democracy party doesn't support it. It's nuts. But here's a cartoon saying, if he was a founding father, I will not fight for democracy unless our English friends join in our cause, which is perfect. Another lie that I want to point out to you before we sign off here, the Chattanooga undocumented children situation. Republicans are making a big stink out of unaccompanied migrant children being in Chattanooga, saying that Biden snuck them in there under the cover of night, using the time the flight landed as some sort of excuse. But the truth is, two very important facts to remember: Trump brought more children to Tennessee than Biden has, and Governor Lee signed off on the license for that group to do that. So this Friday, there will be a joint study committee on refugee issues where these 10 Republicans, 5 from the Senate, 5 from the House, will be discussing this issue at 10 a.m. What you'll notice from that list of people, there's not a single Democrat on this committee to remind them that Trump brought more children here and that Governor Lee signed off on the license. So we'll be there to ask them the question and make them uncomfortable. And I hope everybody shows up that day to make them uncomfortable for this nonsense, this disingenuous garbage. There's only one person on here I have hopes for. That's Todd Gardenhire, who did write an op-ed that they shouldn't be beating up on kids and, that they should tell the truth about what's going on. And so I'm hopeful that Senator Gardenhire will do the right thing here. But, this is scapegoating kids, beating up on migrant kids, and that's happening Friday at 10 a.m. And I hope it's on everybody's radar because it's really, really ugly and it's nonsense. And, it's just more of the same garbage from people like Marsha Blackburn, who made a big stink about this. And she says she's got a motion to eradicate cancel culture as they cancel critical race theory. So full of shit is this woman who has not had a town hall in 4 years, as we will continue to remind you. 1,600 days and counting, no in-person town halls, because the last time she had one, which was right before I ran against her, she got booed to smithereens in Fairview, and then went on CNN and said, oh, those people weren't even from our district, but they were. They had all been ID'd at the door. And then she went on CNN again when Wolf Blitzer called her out and said, oh, we have more important things to worry about. There's nothing more important than the truth. And that's why we have to keep yelling it. And that's why we need to call Marsha out when she fearmongers about migrant children and when she covers up insurrections by being a no-show to the vote, where this was going to be investigated. And this is the image in my mind that should be played over and over again in the minds of people, not only till 2022, but till 2024 and beyond, that we are up against this anarchy, not even anarchy, just fascism, anti-democratic radicalism. And, when they call us radicals, that's just projection. They are the radicals. There's no question about it. Marsha Blackburn is a fascist. Yes. Lauren says when Gardenhire makes sense, it's crazy out there. Absolutely true. Monica says Marsha. Doreen says truth. I appreciate all these comments. It's cathartic for me to vent to you guys, and I appreciate that you're there to say this stuff. Oh, and Mike is saying, from your neighbor in Razorback land, I wish someone in Arkansas would show the sorry, dirty politicians here. Thank you. If somebody wants to start an Arkansas holler, go for it. Happy to talk to you guys about that. But I will say to you, Mike, that I think his name is Chris Jones, just launched a campaign for governor in Arkansas. You should go check him out. His video. He's like a physicist and a pastor, I think, and seems like a really good guy. And his video is off the chains great. So yes, let's not forget about Terry Lynn Weaver, who was at the insurrection. Anyone upholding Trump as a fascist. I agree with everything you guys are saying. I know we could go on and on here all day, but thank you for joining the Holler Hour. We'll be back. Try to have a guest with me on Thursday at 2 p.m., but it's always great to vent and talk to you guys. I appreciate you. Follow all the hollers, and we will see you soon.